Hello again. We are down at Pier 48 where Queen Elizabeth and her entourage is just arriving.
This is the last stop, the last Seattle stop for the Queen, and actually this is the last moments of her West Coast tour to the United States. What will happen here is that she will be greeted by Commodore Lewis and brought through the honor guard that you see here. The band will be playing several tunes, and then she will simply get on board the ship, which will leave in about an hour.
She's going to have a small reception aboard Her Majesty's Yacht, Britannia, and then they will leave for Victoria and Vancouver, and several more receptions there. There are thousands of people lined up at the gates outside Pier 48, and I was just remarking to Michael, there are more police officers here than I think I've ever seen amassed in the city of Seattle.
Everybody gets in on the act here a little bit. I talked to some of the people in the honor guard. They represent all of the military services around here. The Navy is represented here, the Army is here, the Air Force, and the same with the band. Now, the band is the 9th Infantry Band from Fort Lewis, so all the military around Seattle got a chance to participate in this event.
The Queen is going to host a small reception aboard the Britannia. She will sleep, obviously, aboard the yacht tonight. And she travels with about 300 on the crew on the ship, 22 officers and 250-some crewmen. And so she's probably never alone, even though it's a very, very large traveling house.
It's quite a way to travel. It really, part of the royal household really comes along. There are ladies in waiting who take care of all of the clothing and who pay her bills. You know, she never carries any money. That's unseemly for a monarch. So one of the ladies in waiting has always got some change handy if the Queen wants to purchase something. We have a list of some of the people, the select few, who will go on board here for a few minutes and enjoy a reception with the Queen before the boat actually leaves. Those include Mike Deaver, the presidential aide who's accompanied her on most of this journey, Governor and Mrs. Spellman, Mayor and Mrs. Charles Royer, the UK ambassador to the United States, Sir Oliver Wright and Lady Wright, and the American ambassador from the United States to the United Kingdom will be on board here. So those are part of the select few who will be in there for these last few minutes of the Queen's visit to Seattle.
We can only imagine some of the wonderful conversation that went on in the civic reception. We know that the Queen is quite a horsewoman, that Prince Philip is the head of the International Wildlife Fund, and so while she's not given to talking politics, she didn't bring up the subject of the Falklands or probably politics about President Reagan. We know there was lively conversation inside that reception, that together the Queen and Prince Philip are a wealth of information, a storehouse of knowledge. She has ruled England for some 30 years, and so her knowledge about travel, her knowledge about other countries that she visits is extensive.
Now, you may see in the shot there, yes, you do, someone just moving off to the right. That is Selma Roosevelt. She is the White House Chief of Protocol. And generally, she or Mike Deaver, or sometimes both, will be out front of any appearance by the Queen, kind of checking things out to see that all the protocol is met. And Selma Roosevelt has just done that.
Well, we noticed that Mrs. Roosevelt was just pacing off, I presume, the number of steps it's going to take for the Queen and her entourage to get aboard the Yacht Britannia. And that gives you some idea of the tiny, tiny details that have gone into planning this 10-day trip for the Queen throughout the United States.
You see on screen there the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh are just moving down the line now, making some final farewells. The person you see in the white hat there is Commodore Lewin. He is the one who is escorting the Queen down this line, down this honor guard. And they'll make their way slowly toward the ramp here, which will take them aboard the Britannia.
We've learned a lot about protocol and how to treat a Queen here. She extends her hand, and you don't extend yours until that happens. She speaks to you, and you don't speak unless spoken to.
And the first time it is Your Majesty.
Yes.
And after that?
It is Ma'am. She is, as we learned, a woman whose last name is Windsor. His last name is Mountbatten.
And I suppose that's a story almost all the world knows. They were married in 1947. They met each other years before that, but they were married 6 years before the Queen was actually coronated, before she became the Queen of England and the United Kingdom.
She carries her own umbrella. I think that's a nice touch.
Well, with all the rain that they've had. You heard probably in the background the 21-gun salute that accompanied the national anthems of the two countries. God Save the Queen, the British national anthem, followed, of course, by our own. And Governor Spelman and the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh all standing at attention as they were played. They'll be getting on board now, the Britannia. This ship, I might mention, was launched in 1953. The year of the coronation. It was named by the Queen, it was named the Britannia by her, and it was christened by her in that year. And it has logged an awful lot of miles since. So has she. She has logged close to 750,000 miles of these kinds of tours since 1953.
And she is the monarch of England who really saw her country into the television age. Hers was the first coronation ever to be televised. We all, of course, remember the royal wedding and the pomp and ceremony that surrounded that. And now, of course, we will in Seattle all remember the pomp and ceremony of the Queen's visit.
This is Channel 5, KING-TV, Seattle.
This is King 5 News, reported live from News Center 5.
Good evening. I'm Mike James. I'm down at Pier 48, just in front of the Britannia, the royal yacht that will be leaving in just a few moments. Queen Elizabeth has just about wrapped up her visit to Seattle. We're going to give you some of the highlights of that now. The Queen boarded her yacht, the Britannia, just a few minutes ago. Her send-off was a royal one with a traditional 21-gun salute, and it was impressive. The Britannia sailed up to Pier 48 this afternoon. That was just in time to pick up the royal couple and bring them to British Columbia. That's where they'll be sailing tonight. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip arrived in Seattle by plane just before 2 o'clock. Gene.
Queen Elizabeth has a reputation for punctuality, and she certainly embellished that reputation today, arriving on Air Force 2 at Boeing Field precisely at the stroke of 1:55 in the afternoon. The Seattle rain came right in on schedule 2, pouring as the Queen and Prince Philip came down the ramp. Both were ready with umbrellas, and so were members of the welcoming party. Governor Spelman, Seattle Mayor Royer, County Executive Randy Revelle, Boeing officials, and the British Consulate General, all accompanied by their wives. The Queen has never visited Seattle, but the Prince has been here several times, most recently last November. At the end of the welcoming line, the Queen was handed a big bouquet by a nervous but very pleased Catherine Spelman, 13-year-old daughter of the governor. From Boeing Field, the royal party went by motorcade to Children's Orthopedic, and Bill Berg was there.
The Queen and her royal entourage were greeted by little Melanie Giordano. She held a bouquet of rhododendrons for Her Majesty. The urology patient got almost through her much-practiced remarks. Then all the pent-up emotion broke through.
You did a beautiful job.
The crowd went on by. Melanie's moment had passed. Upstairs, the youngsters presented the Queen with a handmade scroll, while Prince Philip talked with hospital staff, patients, and parents. The Queen stopped briefly to talk to a few youngsters like Keith Nash, one of the hospital's many success stories. Keith had his leg severed in an automobile accident. Surgeons managed to sew it back on. The Queen asked Keith's mom what she thought of the hospital. She said she liked it. The Queen looked interested in the hospital, but she remained distant from its patients. Few words were exchanged. Mostly, there were tight smiles of acknowledgement. Hospital visits may be terribly routine for this most traveled monarch, but for the children here, it was a once-in-a-lifetime thrill. At the Children's Orthopedic Hospital, Bill Berg, King 5 News.
Well, the Seattle rain is really coming down now, and I guess rain has fallen over most of the Queen's West Coast tour. She must be used to it by now. I was born in England myself about 42 years ago. My mother is really English, my father Welsh, not real happy about being English. I remember the news in our house when King George died. I remember the family staying up to watch the Queen's coronation back in 1953. I was 13 then, the Queen was 26. I was remembering that coronation these last few days, watching the ceremonies and the welcomes, knowing the Queen would be in Seattle today. In many ways, that coronation was the last great English epic, the last time England stood as a great power. The pomp and the splendor that remain represent not so much what is, but what is gone. And yet it still seems important. And the world tour of even a diminished monarchy still spreads excitement. Why is that? The answer seems to be that the monarchy works on several important levels all at the same time. There is what Malcolm Muggeridge called the soap opera factor. The goings-on of the British family support an army of columnists and tabloid newspapers, and the public does seem to hang on every royal adventure. There is spectacle. We are all Democrats with a small d, but we still love celebrity and ceremony and the splash of great wealth. We are fascinated by the jeweled trappings that separate a monarch from a mere president, even though a president wields far more power. But there is a serious side to this attraction. Much of what we have and are comes from Great Britain, and the Queen represents that history and that relationship. In England itself, where the adjustment to a diminished world role is still painful, there is debate over the future of the monarchy, but it never comes to much. The royal family is Britain's living flag, an assurance that England still counts in the world. To give it up for the British would be to give up on themselves.
And so, Michael, you wouldn't give up that little touch of British citizenship either.
No, I wouldn't. I'm not a monarchist, but this monarchy is very important to the English people.
And I think on ceremonial occasions such as this, and I recall the wedding of Lady Di and Prince Charles, most other people not associated with the monarchy wouldn't give up on it either.
No, we all make something from it.
The Queen hasn't had much opportunity to speak to the American people while she's been here, but she made a rare and welcomed chance out of a visit to the University of Washington. And we'll tell you about that appearance when King 5 News continues. The Queen delivered only one speech while she was visiting here in Seattle, and it was at the University of Washington this afternoon. Heck Edmondson Pavilion was filled to capacity 2 hours before the Queen's arrival. The motorcade passed by the pavilion on the way to Children's Orthopedic Hospital while the crowd listened to the university's symphony orchestra. And finally, the wait was over.
Ladies and gentlemen, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth and His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
Escorted by University President Dr. William Gerberding, the Queen and Prince Philip were led to the podium. And on the podium, the Queen was formally welcomed by Governor Spellman a second time today.
Your visit, I would like to present you with a book that in words and photographs captures the beauty and the grandeur of the state of Washington.
At Heck Edmondson Pavilion, the Queen gave her farewell address to Seattle, to the Northwest, and to the United States on this tour. And Dave Sebastian has that report.
Heck Ed was packed to the flag-draped rafters for this convocation, nearly 9,000 people. The Queen spoke of the long historical ties between her country and the Pacific Northwest, especially in the area of trade.
Captain Cook, on his expedition here in 1778, was one of the first to recognize the trade potential of the region. It was British traders who started the fur trade with China and can therefore lay some claim to having begun the international trade between the Pacific Northwest and the countries of the Pacific Rim, which provides so much of your lifeblood today.
This was the Queen's final address before she left the U.S., and she took the opportunity to thank her hosts.
In the 10 days that we have been on the Pacific coast, we have learnt the truth about the saying that where the handshake is a little stronger and where the smile dwells a little longer, that is where the West begins.
This was the Queen's fourth visit to the U.S., but her first to the Pacific Northwest. A trip, she said, that fulfilled a long-time ambition. At Heck Ed, I'm Dave Sebastian, King 5 News.
Well, you and presumably thousands like you have been watching the Queen's visit, warm, safe, and dry in your living rooms. Other people got a glimpse of the Queen or tried to get a glimpse by going out on the streets. One such reporter, Julie Blacklow.
The crowd at the Seattle Center was about as big a mix of people as you will see in the Northwest. Every age, every walk of life. Together today with one common purpose, to try and see a queen. An event which brought out Fran and Don Murphy.
She always keeps her cool, I think. You know, she's very calm and unruffled, and I think it's very outstanding about her.
Her husband is a rather interesting person, I think, since he's military, and of course I'm retired military, so we have a little something in common there.
3 hours of waiting, and finally she arrives.
I think she's a wonderful person, I really do. She's a very brave person to come to a crowd like this.
Oh yeah, that's great. I really like seeing the Queen.
At least we got to see her. It's pretty neat. I didn't even get to see her.
Didn't you see that blue coat with the daffodils?
Nope.
I
never got to. These. I gave my camera to a lady to take a picture. She got a picture real far away. I don't think it turned out. When I found out these guys.
What did you think of that?
On their shoulders.
Not good, because I couldn't hardly see her. Because there's this lady that was standing up in front of me, and she kept taking pictures, and she had her hand in the way, so I couldn't see her.
What do you think about Queen Elizabeth?
Oh, I think she's nice.
I think she's great.
Why do you think she's great?
Because she rules a country, and that's a hard job.
All that, and a little sunshine, too. At the Seattle Center, I'm Julie Blacklow, King 5 News.
Just about every visitor to the Seattle area likes to go to the Seattle Center, tries to hitch a ride on the monorail, and Queen Elizabeth today was no exception. We'll have more of that for you in just a moment. The Queen's visit here took her to some of Seattle's sights during the afternoon. During that brief 5-hour stop, she went to the Seattle Center, and Hattie Kaufman was there.
The atmosphere at the Seattle Center was festive, like an outdoor fair. The crowds gathered hours in advance to try to get a good spot to see the Queen. And at last, she arrived. A Seattle dance group performed some traditional English dances, but the Queen could only watch briefly and then went on to her monorail ride. Thousands gathered downtown at the monorail terminal to greet the Queen. They lined the sidewalks 20 deep, and those who couldn't see from the sidewalk got a view from above. Security was tight. On top of the army of Secret Servicemen, the Seattle Horse Patrol was back in action. This was perhaps the best chance for Seattle citizens to see royalty. The Queen abandoned her motorcade and walked the 4 or 5 blocks to the Westin Hotel, where she would attend a private reception for about 400 invited guests. But for the many not invited, the Queen's walk through town was the highlight of her visit here. In Seattle, Hattie Kaufman, King 5 News.
Well, as Hattie pointed out, just about the best chance for commoners in Seattle to get a glimpse of the Queen was on that walk from the monorail terminal down to the Westin Hotel. And with that in mind, Lou Gellos went out to take a look at a family who tried to get that glimpse.
Benjamin Davies probably won't remember this day, but he did know something special was happening. His mother, born the year Queen Elizabeth was coronated, accompanied her parents in London to see the Queen. Now Benjamin, the same age as his mother was then, was doing the same.
I went to see the Queen when I was his age, and I don't remember it at all. It will be nice, though, if we can get some good photographs of the Queen so we can show him later, and tape this on the video so that we can also show him that.
Seattle Sounders striker Roger Davies had never seen the Queen in person. Like many transplanted Britons living in Seattle, he was excited by the chance to see the Queen.
There's a lot of us over here, a lot of people working at Bowen and, the soccer players. There are a lot of English people here. And really, I would never have thought that the Queen had be coming to Seattle. It's not the place that I'd have thought the Queen had come for a royal visit, whatever. But now she's coming. We're going to make the most of it. We're going down and try and get a glimpse of her, hopefully, just to, to say we've seen the Queen in person.
But first, lunch with others who would try to see the Queen. Then, downtown, the monorail went by with the Queen. Then, surrounded by security, the Davies watched the Queen stroll by. In seconds, she was gone. Was it worth it?
She's just full of regal and everything. She's a tremendous figurehead. She looked tremendous. Really pleased.
So were most of the people who lined Fifth Avenue. Lou Gellos, King 5 News.
Well, the Queen has had terrible weather for her trip on the West Coast, and we know because we're standing in some of it right now. It's pouring down. Jeff Wren is going to be here with conditions up toward British Columbia, Victoria, BC, where the Queen is going next, and Jeff will have that for you next.
Well, fascination with things British doesn't seem to be confined to Great Britain. There is one American home where the Queen's name is a household word. Our columnist Don McGaffin has more about that.
It may look like a neat Tudor home on Seattle's 16th Street Northeast, but if you take a close look and squint your eyes a little bit, it's more like a Lancashire cottage and clearly British. And inside there is a portrait of the Queen in the honored position above the fireplace, Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor. Those are household words here because this also is Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Haslam. This cool, composed, and regal beauty holds dual citizenship, American and British. Her parents, Pauline and Trevor Haslam, immigrated from England after World War II, but their hearts remain in England and with the royal family.
I've had always such a great admiration for Her Royal Highness, and I just couldn't think of a much grander name or a nicer name to give a child than Elizabeth Alexandra Mary.
This 11-year-old student at St. Catherine's School lives in a home resplendent with the sense, the feel, the presence of England and the royal family. It's everywhere you look. And when you're named Elizabeth Alexandra Mary, you are a bit different.
I like it because it makes me feel privileged that I'm named after the Queen. And because hardly any other people are named after the Queen like I am. I bet the other Elizabeth Alexandra Mary doesn't have to do dishes.
Don McGaffin for King 5 News.
Well, the Queen has had a whirlwind tour of the Northwest, just enough of a taste of it to let her know why it's such a nice place to live. We're going to have a wrap-up of her visit when we come back.
Right, here we are back at Pier 48 on the Seattle waterfront. Just to catch you up very quickly, behind us is the Britannia, the royal yacht. The Queen and Prince Philip are on board now. All of their guests that they had on are off. And from all the signs behind me, I think they're just about to cast off. It'll only be a few minutes from now.
I think we'd like to be going with them. I'm sure it's warm and safe and dry in there. Now, we have told you about the Queen's trip, 5 stops in Seattle in all, from Boeing Field at the beginning to Heck Edmondson and the Seattle Center, a stop by Orthopedic Hospital, and then on to her yacht tonight.
It's been quite a trip. And I just want to say one thing as we part here and look at pictures of the trip. This is hard work, and Queen Elizabeth is a professional at what she does. A very impressive day. Good night.
And we'll join you for more of King 5 News at 11. Have a pleasant evening.